on the one hand, one of the threats to the big three is the electric vehicle. But as you said, the second and equally, if not, more threatening is the autonomous driver. I mean, it is Elon Musk's goal to remove the steering wheel from an automobile. That's his goal. He said, he goes, I want to remove the steering wheel from the automobile. That would be one aspect of the car driving experience I would like to remove. And we've all been driven around before. And, and you tell me how the American public are going to respond when they know that with reasonable certainty, they can be taken anywhere and not have to drive themselves. And they have a personal vehicle to do it.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Hey, we're already in the last part of September. So far, no stock market crashes, but we do have 11 days. So there is plenty of time for that. But in the meantime, UAW has walked out on the big three. The big three really is in the midst of an existential crisis. Although nobody wants to admit it. The emperor, his clothes were sent out to the dry cleaner. The dry cleaner lost them. And you know what happened to the emperor with no clothes. Carl Gould is here with us now, our good friend Carl. He is the president of 7 Stage Advisors. You find him at 7 Stage Advisors. That's 7, the number, stageadvisors.com. And if you got a question for Carl, myself, KL@kerrylutz.com is the email address to send it to. Carl, great to have you back on. So, UAW, are they whistling past the cemetery, or do they just want to get everything they possibly can because they know that the big three is basically going down?
Well, I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one is the unions got a landmark deal with UPS earlier in the year, so they're feeling their strength, and they feel like they've got the timing on their side. The sentiment in the country right now is very pro-union, and we applaud any worker that's willing to go back to work, stay at work. So the timing, the sentiment, the mood is in the union's favor. And if you remember back to 2007 and 2008 when the financial collapse happened and it really impacted the big three, that union took a pretty big haircut to keep the companies in business. Now we're in a bit of an artificial boom because of the pandemic and because of supply chain challenges. Cars have been, and the chip shortage, if you all remember, cars were hard to get, so the prices are high. Prices are high, so there's profits right now. But it is it's an empty calorie here. It's an artificial boom. And right around the corner is the EV revolution. So while they can likely take advantage of some short-term gains, this is a long-term play, asking for a 36 to 40% increase in salary. It's going to put the company out of business.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Hey, the profits were artificially inflated of the big three because of the chip shortage, because of the car shortage, because used car prices skyrocketed so high that it was cheaper to buy a new car than a used car. I mean, Carl, in Florida here, there is a Toyota dealer, one of the largest in the country. And during the midst of the pandemic, I passed by their lot and literally it was empty. There were like a couple of cars parked in front of the office. Yeah, there were no cars on the lot at all. So, Detroit, whenever they can, they jack up their prices. And then that sets the stage for the next time when people say, the cost of a new car is too high and we're just not going to buy. And then they go busy rebating, discounting, all this stuff. Is there a better way of doing things than they are doing it?
Well, yeah, of course there is. I mean, the union workers are looking at the fact that the CEOs took big pay increases over the last 3 to 4 years. And they're saying, well, if you got a 40% raise, we want a 40% raise. And that's what they're basing it on. They're working off of that narrative to see if they can get more. Now, I'm the first guy to say, listen, you should negotiate the best deal for yourself. At the same time, it would be in everyone's interest if they sat down and said, okay, let's look at the long-term strategy of the company and let's see where this company is going to be 10 years from now. Because these big three automakers are trading at a very low price to earning ratio in their stock. And what that means is that's the market saying, we don't think you're going to be around all that much longer. 10 years from now, there's no guarantee all three of them are still in business the same way that they are right now. Other manufacturers have come to the United States. They've moved south. They moved out of Detroit. They're not union shops. And last time I checked, those companies, are selling an awful lot of cars, and so there really should be a balance here. And in the midst of a recession and high prices, we have a union force that is trying to ultimately hurt the customer or pressure the customer in order to get their way. And if they get it, the price of these cars are going to go even higher. So this is not quite the way to go about it. And I'm not putting the fault on the strikers. I'm not putting the fault on the solely on management. I'm putting it in both sides. You can't figure out how to carve up multiple billions of dollars a year. To me, that's irresponsible.
Hey, and they do have a point. The CEO's pay has gone way, way up. Maybe if the CEOs knew, or the companies knew, that whatever you give the CEO in terms of increased compensation, other than for extraordinary circumstances, you're going to have to give to the workers, maybe that would put a lid on CEO pay.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you think about it, that the CEO compensation, is equally as irresponsible as what the workers are demanding. You've got to look at the bigger picture here. There comes a point in your life where you say, does that little bit extra change my life for the better? And if I were to take less, is that actually more for me long term? And so there's optics with this as well. And this just does not seem to be the most well thought through long-term strategy. And meanwhile, you see the market share of the big three going down, whereas you see Tesla, Toyota, Kia, Hyundai, and these other brands, Subaru, that continue, and Mercedes, that continue to see their market share rise. So again, it seems to be short-sighted, and they're in charge of an awful lot of money that they seem to have a hard time managing.
Yeah, a lot of assets too, and the nickname for the president of GM, Mary Barra, is Mary Embarrassment. I mean, she makes all these proclamations about EVs and everything else, and yet in reality, GM's producing very few EVs, and like it or not, that is the future of the auto industry in the U.S. and the world.
Yeah, it's certainly heading in that direction, and there'll be niche players. There'll always be that. There'll always be that niche internal combustion manufacturer, and that's where those three are headed if they're not careful. They've done a tremendous job of making those cars energy efficient, the lowest carbon emission ever in the history of the manufacturing. But at the same time, the demand is not going to be there. And what we're going to see is the demand for the internal combustion driven car is going to shrink, and there'll always be the need for a big block V8. There's just not going to be as much of one, and the companies are going to have to right size and downsize as a result of that.
Yeah, there's a certain inevitability to this thing here, Carl. And hey, you look at Tesla; they're making more money than just about the entire big three put together, and their profits go up every year. Their sales go up every year. They're a company on the move, And it seems to me that Detroit, as well as other regular car companies, legacy car companies around the world, are kind of been left flat-footed here.
This is how far behind the big three are. So Tesla controls the software, the master software programming in the entire car. If Ford wanted to change how the seats, the electric seats operated, they would have to go to the electric seat vendor and get permission from them to alter their software. I believe there are 19 different softwares inside of a Ford vehicle, and Ford doesn't own any of them. And for the first time in their history, they are writing their own master software. Tesla has had it for 10 years, and all the data and the millions and millions of miles that have been driven where they can utilize that data for better manufacturing. The big three are just getting started today. That's how far behind they are.
Think what'll happen if and when Tesla masters full self-driving and the car drives itself literally from point A to point B. Pretty close right now, I got to tell you. But imagine when they hit it. That could be the spike in the only choice the big three will have is to beg Tesla to license it to them.
Right. I mean, so you say on the one hand, one of the threats to the big three is the electric vehicle, but as you said, the second and equally, if not more threatening, is the autonomous driver. I mean, it is Elon Musk's goal to remove the steering wheel from an automobile. That's his goal. He goes, I want to remove the steering wheel from the automobile. That would be one aspect of the car driving experience I would like to remove. And we've all been driven around before. And, and you tell me how the American public are going to respond when they know that with reasonable certainty, they can be taken anywhere and not have to drive themselves. And they have a personal vehicle to do it.
And then that brings up the whole thing of, do you need to own a car at all? You just call one on an app and it comes and picks you up and takes you from point A to point B. And it's a real game changer for the entire auto industry. So what do we learn from where the big three are now and where they potentially may wind up?
Well, I think their adversarial relationship with their labor has been an issue for decades. It's been an issue for decades, right? The union wants to bring back the 1980s, guaranteed retirement plans and lifetime employment and some of the agreements that they had in place then. I don't see that as a sustainable strategy. I think they're just going to put these companies out of business flat out. And I think that's where it's headed. So I do think they have a bigger problem on their hand than just this strike. But maybe this strike is an opportunity for them all to say, all right, let's put our heads together to see what we could do for the survival of the company, not necessarily our own particular interests.
Okay. And maybe that's a form of evolution here, but the worker has got to feel like the CEO is going to feel the pain just like they are, and they got to share in the benefits just like the CEO does, no matter how good or bad the company's doing. I mean, what does Merry Embarrassment get? Like 25 million, 50 if it's
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and I don't know that this is a pain scenario. I think these are three companies right now that are drowning in profits and they are swimming in abundance. And we have two sides that are struggling to figure out how to split up. Exactly. It's not that they're in survival mode. That's a different story. That was 2007, 2008, really 2009, 10. But right now, that's not the case. Right now, they're prosperous, and they should be asking themselves, how can we make sure we stay there?
That could change very quickly, Carl, as we
can.
They could
and it could change quickly. Yeah.
So the cost of not innovating is really a cost that they can't afford to bear.
Because the biggest threat to the union is automation. And these are assembly lines that are already run robotic already, and there's more to come. That's the bigger threat to them.
Yeah.
So again, that's where I would be focusing my efforts on right now.
Yeah. Well, they don't even know what they're in for at this point, Carl. It's amazing. They really don't get it. They seem to be completely clueless. Both, I think the unions get it a little bit and management gets it, but the stupidity of the two interest groups, mutual stupidity, could really well be their undoing, you know?
Right. It's very, very short-sighted. I get it. And I'm the first guy, like I said, I'm the first guy to say, negotiate what you're worth. Negotiate your value. Right. At the same time, let's not kill the golden goose along the way. You know, you can hold something so tight that you choke it out.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that's what both sides are, you know, in danger of doing if they're not careful.
And you might very well be correct. Their sales have been going down for years as a percentage of the entire market. They've sold off their overseas operations. Once they lose it here, they're finished. Hey, Carl, appreciate your coming on as always. And make sure you go over to Carl's site, 7stageadvisors.com. That's the number 7stageadvisors.com. Got a question for Carl and myself? Shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Link to Carl's site is in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. While you're there, sign up for your free newsletter. Carl, always a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.